Hello, hello. Welcome to the Expanded Woman podcast. I have Brianne on the podcast today to talk about her business and all kinds of other stuff. We're going to see what we get into today. So, welcome to the podcast, Brianne. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Yes, me too. Well, let's just dive right into it. I had a whole bunch of questions I want to ask you. I've been starting to interview more local people, so I just want to ask you like where you're from. Are you from the area or
So, right now, I'm currently residing in Edmonton for like another 4 days before we take off traveling for a couple of months. But we were in Stony Plain, Alberta for quite some time. And prior to that, our roots are actually quite west in very small towns of Wildwood and Evansburg, Alberta, which are like towns of like 700 and 1100 people. So, not really well known, but definitely born and raised in Alberta, which I am absolutely in love with, but also do not like the winter of. So I
yeah?
do my best to escape it as often as I can, which is why we're taking off on Tuesday for a little bit. So
Yeah. And it looks like you guys are leaving at literally the perfect time because I think it's starting to get chilly again. So,
yeah, I mean, if I would have had it my way, we would have left back in October like we usually do every year. But of course, between surgeries and life and all the
mm.
things, it delayed us a little bit, but that's okay. We're still gonna make the most of it. So
Yes, we're going to get into that. I have so many questions for you. Um, yeah, I honestly have kind of held off from exploring your content too much because I just wanted to have a conversation with you and hear your story straight from you. So, yeah, I just kind of curious about like when you started your business and what your business was. And yeah, let's just take off from there.
sure. So my business today looks very different than what it did even 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even. And now, 2026, this is like the first year that I'm stepping into a completely different way of operating and being than I ever have before in my life, which is really beautiful. So, primarily right now, I am also a podcast host and I do write and do guest speaking. I have just launched my Substack recently, so I'm doing a couple of different publications on like life in your 30s and surviving that, as well as some travel publications and some deeper dives into our podcast and things like that. So that is kind of where I find myself right now, invested in a life of freedom, a life of ease, a life of following what is in most alignment. But it definitely did not start there. I had a business for the last 10 years, we'll say, that was predominantly based in my nursing license and in
Mm.
coaching. So I was a registered nurse. And I had created like a holistic health coaching company that helped people basically get healthy in the most natural way possible. And in the beginning, it was kind of me. And as we started to go through the years moving on, I began to expand, bringing additional members onto my team. And then in 2022, I got this really crazy, stupid idea to massively expand that company and bring on a large percentage of people to the company and open a bunch of clinics, which sounded really great in theory. And I thought was on the cusp of creating something really beautiful post pandemic that was going to be needed and, you know, desired by many people. And unfortunately, as we entered 2023 and we had hired all these people and opened all these clinics, shortly thereafter, things catastrophically failed with that company. And it ended up closing its doors completely and not in a good energy space. And in fact, I ended up having to file a personal bankruptcy following it. And it was a very, very traumatic, stressful, very sick time for me over that duration of like 2023 to basically now 2026, having closed everything down, let everything go, moved through a huge cancel culture attack of me online and other things that were kind of associated in there. So it was brutal for a while, but now what I've kind of learned on the outskirts of this, now that I'm past all of that trial and tribulation, is really that I was creating this business and really pushing it for the wrong reasons. I was
Mhm.
trying to fulfill almost like a need of validation. There was this huge fear of judgment, this fear of opinions of others, this fear of not being liked that was driving a lot of what I was doing. I did not use my voice. I was a chronic people pleaser. I never said no. And ultimately, I was trying to create this company in the energy space of pleasing everybody, which just cannot be done for any
Mm,
company out there. It's not a possibility. So it actually really opened my eyes to all of these underlying fears and beliefs that I really held for a long duration of my timeline, and actually helped me heal my mother wound to a really deep degree. So now the space that I'm moving into, it feels like freedom. It's hard to really describe, but I think for most of my life, I wanted to achieve this feeling of freedom, but I didn't know actually what that was or what that actually felt like. I thought that I had it for lots of years, but I actually didn't. And now that these fears are released, unlocked, let go into the world, I'm suddenly in a place where freedom actually is what my life is being designed around. And as the name of your podcast says, I feel expanded in life like I haven't ever been before, which is crazy to say. It's really funny when we look back at our life and we see all the decisions that we made, things that we did, all these times that we thought we were living in alignment, and we actually weren't. So
yes,
so
totally.
yeah, so I feel like I'm a good place right now in the direction that I took, but I gave up my coaching license, I hung up my nursing license, I walked away from that entire world to do what I've always wanted to do, which is be a writer. So
Oh,
yeah.
I love that. And just from like the snippets that I see here and there, you do very much exude like an energy of like freedom. Like I can tell that you've kind of like freed yourself from the shackles of what you thought you had to be.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
resonates.
Yeah. I just want to like ask you a little bit more about like what that was like for you for I can imagine that probably that was like all of your deepest, darkest shadows coming up with the failure of that business. I can only
Oh,
imagine.
I'm like, girl, don't even
Like,
get me
are you
started.
okay? Are you okay?
I, we're in a great place now, and obviously I can laugh about it at this point, right? And I love a little dark humor. Like, don't get me wrong, I've been through so much shit in my lifetime. Can I swear on your podcast? I'm just
Oh,
gonna swear.
absolutely. Swear away.
Okay, yeah, like that is better to know at the beginning rather than as we get into
Yes,
this.
I
But
should have mentioned that.
that's okay. But I have been through a lot of shit in my life, a lot of trauma, and a multitude of things have impacted me in different ways, but never like this experience did. And there was a deep unraveling that occurred. Honestly, there was a good 2 years where I was so dissociated, my nervous system shut down completely. When we're home here on the ground in Alberta, anytime that we would go into a grocery store, like Superstore or Walmart or whatever, my nervous system would shut down in full on panic that I would run into somebody that would recognize me, that would have something horrible to say, that would, want to tell me all the awful things that I did and what a terrible person I am. So I had dissociation for 2 full years where I felt like I was living in like a cloud bubble of fear and panic. And it was honestly the sickest, the most stressed, the most depressed that I have ever been in my life. My hair was falling out in clumps. I, had lost a ton of weight where I was like kind of like skin and bones. I had all kinds of symptoms going on, which are in part to the breast implants that I had at the time too. But there was additional cortisol responses that were 100% happening at the same time. And the uncovering of those fears was not a very easy, streamlined process. It's not like you just go through something, you're like, oh, these are the fears that were tied to it. Now I've checked them and I've healed them and they're gone. It took a lot of work, a lot of stripping down to like the rawest, most vulnerable parts of me and who I thought I was, but was just pretending to be, versus the version of me that I actually am and I actually want to be, trying to figure out how I was going to walk away from a life that I have known for 30 years of my life and create something new moving forward. So it was big. It was challenging and difficult and gross in the most heinous energies that you can possibly imagine, but I'm also so incredibly grateful for it because it put me onto this path and actually helped me realize what it is that I'm meant to do and be able to get my beliefs and my fears in a reality check, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally relate to that, maybe on a smaller scale, but just having situations with shadows coming up. And I mean, like, I come from the party scene, so to be in a
Mm,
spiritual space and to be holding space for people in that way, I can definitely relate to like having those fears of like people from your past being like, who are you? Like, this is not who you are because we can be different versions of ourselves, or we can be versions of ourselves that aren't real, based on just how we were behaving in that way during that period of time. And so I can totally relate to the shame and the feeling of being like exposed and the
mm.
fear of running into people. Like, I don't even like to go to the try. I can, I mean, I like to hide a little bit, but I'm like, oh my God, I always see people I know here. I don't want to run into people I know, not for any like reason, like, whatever, but I can, I can relate to that on a level for sure.
Absolutely. And it's in those times when you're always like, I don't want to run into anybody, that you always run into people. And you're
Oh
like,
my
I'm just going
God.
to run in here for a second. And you see six people that you know, and you're like, Jesus, why? Why today? Yeah, so I definitely get that. But, what you're speaking to too, in terms of like that imposter syndrome, I mean, I felt that as well deeply because here I am being told from people online, like it's to just give a little bit of context towards it. In that year and a half where I was being stalked online, I was receiving hundreds of comments a month on all of my public like profiles on social media that was
Ooh.
telling me that I was a scam artist and I was a fraud and I was a horrible person, and I was even getting anonymous emails with death threats, and everything was getting attacked. So I shut down everything online for a portion of time before I actually started stepping back out into the world. And I really appreciate what you said of like the energy that I convey on social media now of like freedom, because I had to fight to get here and be able to express myself in that way. I was your chronic, quiet woman that would never say anything before. I bit my tongue in so many scenarios. My voice being unleashed wasn't a thing. I did not face conflict. I ran away from it. And I lived my entire life that way. And it's hilarious that I thought that I was going to make an impact or like have this big successful business out in a public eye when I was carrying those fears to such a deep degree. Because how can you show up in the world and be raw and real with your voice and true if you are also carrying these huge fears that you haven't unlocked and you haven't even bothered to acknowledge are there underneath the surface? And that was me. Know that
Yeah.
I had such a big fear of being judged or, people not liking me. But once it was clear to me, holy fuck, was it clear. You can see it in
Yeah.
everything that I've done in my life up until this point, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that I could say to that too. Like, I think it's such a common thing for people to seek out validation from like their business and from our accomplishments in life in general, right? Like, that being said, I feel as though like the seed of most of it, and I don't know if you resonate with this, I would imagine you do, that the seed of your business was in good intention.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely was. And the thing is, I know the type of person that I am, right? I know the person and the heart that I have and the intentions that I meant to have in relation to the steps that I took and the decisions that I took. But not everybody's going to recognize that, and a lot of people are going to judge me based on their own perceptions of what they think happened or what their experiences, their trauma, that lens that they're
Of
carrying.
course,
They're going
of
they're going to
course.
judge the situation in that lens, right? So I mean, it's okay, and I recognize this now. It's okay for me to be the villain in somebody else's story. It's okay for me to
Yes.
be the
We
person that did
always will
wrong.
be in
Hmm.
someone's story.
Absolutely.
Always. Yeah.
And I feel that way so deeply inside that I've made peace with it. I've become neutral with it. It's okay that if you hate me, it's okay if you don't agree with the choices that I made. Nobody can say that they would do different because you weren't in my shoes and you weren't faced with the heaviness of what I had to go through. So I have compassion for the people that did send those comments or those threats or all of the things that came my way, because the truth is that when we are in a scary situation and it's very uncertain and everything is happening, it feels like to us, like what I was causing the pain to other people that were involved in the situation. When we're on the other side of that coin, we're looking for somewhere to point the blame. And that's not a bad thing. That's natural human nature. Where's the fault? And I was the fault for a lot of people. I did a lot of things that I'm not proud of, a lot of things that I wish that I could do differently with this new mindset or this new understanding of circumstances or even the very basics of how things like employment standards works. There's a lot of things that I didn't know as a brand new business owner. A lot of stuff that I'd never heard of before, and if I would have known things that I know now, I could have done some things differently, but I didn't. I didn't know better. I knew as good as I could have in those situations and did as good as I could have with the information that I had. So
Yeah,
I'm okay to be the villain. I'm okay to be that, you know, point of fault or blame for others in this circumstance because that's natural. And I hope by me being able to accept part of that, it helps somebody else heal and be able to move on from the situation as well.
totally. And even just like speaking to you, your story is really resonating deeply with me because I've had situations in my life where I have been the villain and like I have felt shame about things that I've done, and it's really hard to integrate that and to come to terms with it, and it takes a really fucking long time. And I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
imagine how much like when it's multiple people in a public situation like this. Oh, girl, like I applaud you for how hard you probably had to work to move through all that pain. I just like I can't even imagine. And it's a really honestly beautiful testament for others to have you come on here and to speak about it. And it is really hard to accept being the villain, but it's like, we hear it all the time. You can't make everybody happy. You really can't.
Mm.
I also wanted to speak to like the whole aspect of how fast you grew your business. A nervous system, how can a nervous system handle that? So it's not really
Mm.
surprising to me that when shit hit the fan, that your nervous system was like,
100%.
I'm out. I am out.
100%. Yes. And, I love that you touched on that because I think that's another thing that we often miss is that I heard this quote a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago. It was probably like a year after everything really started to fucking crumble. And the quote said that the energy that you create it with is the energy that you are with there. And so basically, like, as you do it, as you are. So, in creating and expanding a business, if I'm doing so in the energy of hustle, grind, force, and doing so out of fear, and I used to say all the time, like it was some kind of I don't know, metal that I was receiving that if I stop stirring the pot stops stirring. Well, if I'm building a business in that energy, I'm never taking time off, I'm never having breaks, I'm never taking care of myself. What do I expect when I get it? When I get the success, when I hit
Yeah.
that level? Am I going to be able to suddenly completely alter my life and do things different? Or is there a potential that that business is going to crumble and falter because I'm no longer trying to maintain it in the same energy that I created it.
Mm,
So that for me was a really big awareness. And I love that you also touched on the shame because how much shame do we carry in our journey about the things that we quote unquote did wrong? I don't know about you, but life is about doing things wrong. It's about
yeah.
figuring things out, right? Experimenting, playing, being curious, making a fuck ton of mistakes. And
Yes.
I coined this experience for me the greatest fuck up of my life or the biggest fuck up of my life because it was. It was the time of my life that I was doing things for all the wrong reasons, but it also, like I said, led to the most greatest blessings on the other side of that. And so when I think about us and our shame, I think that we have to really, as women, learn how to let that go and be able to move into a space where we are having more compassion, more forgiveness for ourselves, and celebrating somebody if they are willing to face that shame head on and admit it out into the world. Instead of saying, well, I'm not all these things that people think I am, what if we just started saying, well, maybe I am, and I'm all of these other things too, and that's okay. Like, that's very empowering, a very empowering space to be in as a woman to say, yes, I am the villain, but I'm also the hero. Yes, I
Yeah.
am the bad, but I'm also all this good. Both exist. Nothing in this world exists without a darkness counterpart. Everything has two pieces to it. I mean, think of the yin and the yang, right? So I think we really do have to start honoring that darkness for ourselves to be able to move forward and actually get to the areas of our life that we want to be at.
I 100% agree. And it's funny because I don't know if this is a collective, well, I mean, this is obviously something that you went through a while ago, but I think shame has been coming up a lot for me lately. And it's like the way that I was connecting with it, it's like shame and guilt are like the hardest emotions to move through because like you were saying before about the blame, like being able to blame other people, we can't blame other people for the things that we are ashamed of. We have only ourselves to reason with. And I think that's why it's so much harder to deal with. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to like uh expose ourselves, if we will. Like that's the name of my book that I'm writing, and I'm like kind of confessing like all this shit that I just haven't ever really talked about before. And like I even remember I was listening to a book where she was talking about her relationship that she had had with her kid's father and how on and off it was and how ashamed she was of it. And I was like, oh, like I felt so seen because I've gone through like similar situation myself or am going through. It just really, when we hear other people sharing the things that they were ashamed of or are ashamed of, it gives us permission to, I think, give ourselves grace
Mm.
and to, I don't know, just to feel like we're not alone. I think that everybody thinks that the things that they have done are worse than everybody else. Do you know what I mean? I think
Oh, yeah.
everyone's like, oh, well, no, like you're okay, but the things that I have done are really bad. Like, do you know what I
Mm.
mean?
Absolutely. We're our own worst critics. We beat ourselves up so much and think that we're the worst persons on the planet. And to be quite honest, as bad as the things that were happening to me were in terms of like the comments that people were saying and the public like failure that was occurring, no matter how much somebody else told me I sucked, I was telling myself I sucked worse. And that was what actually killed me. It's not because they were saying it, because
They
I
were
believed
confirming
it.
it to
Mm-hmm.
you. Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes it so painful is like the confirmation of the beliefs that are running in our head. And I can only
Mm-hmm.
imagine in a situation like that that it turns into sort of like almost a full surrender kind of situation. You're like, well, here it is, my worst fears, and like
Swallow them up.
you have
Yeah.
nothing, you have nowhere to go but face everything.
Well, that's just it. Eventually, it is rock bottom, right? There's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. You can't ignore it forever. And I think that it was inevitable for that to occur. Maybe not to that scale had I done things differently, but if I wanted to create some kind of business in the public eye, I would need to be able to build a strong enough backbone to be able to not care what people think of me. And if I wasn't able to do that in the minuscule ways that had been presented up until that point, well, then it really was the only option for something to be that extreme that I had no choice but to find my voice, face conflict, be able to overcome those deep-seated fears. So for me, that felt very divinely timed in terms of the universe and kind of getting me onto the right path. The other thing is that I heard, throughout my coaching that I did from this circumstance moving forward, my coach kind of explained to me that we are always playing three kind of counterparts in any experience that we have. We are playing both the victim and also the abuser, where we are abusing ourselves. And then we also have like this witness or this neutral counterpart that can take on whatever perspective or opinion of that circumstance that we wish for it to hold. So instead of being in circumstances where we're faced with trauma or situations that are really hard for us to deal with, instead of us moving into the victim state where woe is me, life is hard, this is happening to me, I'm never going to recover from this. This is the end of the world. Instead of being in that energy or being in the abuser energy of you suck, you're so stupid, how could you make these choices? You're always fucking up, whatever that voice sounds like to us. If we are able to move ourselves into the witness or that feeling of neutrality, it's like a feeling of calmness, a feeling of acceptance, a feeling of understanding for that circumstance and all of the perspectives that had otherwise been involved in that. And I feel like in my life, I've been able to now move to the witness or the neutrality point in most of the things that I've been through, but specifically this circumstance for sure. And when you reach that place, it's so hard to explain what it feels like, but it feels like freedom. It feels like no matter what happens, you have your own back and you don't have to worry about anything. You can walk into a store and not have your nervous system shut down. And in fact, I would say most of the time, unless I'm sharing about it in like these open environments through my writing, my own podcasting, etc., I really don't think about that circumstance that often.
Hmm.
And that's really wild to say because it was such a big part of my life for the last few years where that's all I could think about. So, I mean, eventually we do get to the other side, but we have to trust that that's going to happen and allow ourselves to surrender into whatever lesson that might be.
Yeah, that is like the epitome of like a visibility wound.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Like here it is.
100%.
Yeah. Wow. To get through that, like, did you work with people to help you move through that and to kind of, because I imagine like, well, I mean, I do a lot of nervous system work, I do somatic work, and I'd imagine it probably took a while for you to even come out of that freeze to be able to feel any of those feelings.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I, prior to this, had been doing predominantly trauma coaching for a lot of clients. So, breath work, somatic practices, like a lot of this stuff was my bread and butter, we'll call it, prior to this circumstance occurring. And when it happened, it was like I forgot everything. It was like I forgot how to work with my body, how to listen to my body, how to move through the emotions that I was experiencing. I would say predominantly because I was numb. I couldn't
Yeah.
really feel any of the things that I was feeling because I was so shut off, dissociated, and numb to the entire experience. It wasn't until I did start to move through that freeze and I started to thaw out that I finally was able to notice, hey, I got some rage, inside of me. Hey, I have some fear, some sadness, some whatever. And finally was able to kind of start compartmentalizing almost those emotions and be able to work through them and heal to a greater extent. But it took me being able to thaw before that actually happened. So,
Yeah.
ironically enough, at the very beginning of like the collapse, I ended up finding she calls herself a human design coach, but she is like all up into the world of energy and spirituality. And I hadn't really opened myself up to the spiritual side, kind of similar to you prior to that point. Like I had started to dabble in it and I had my crystals and my oracle cards and all the things, but I wasn't fully invested in that world because I was scared again, what will people think if they find out that I actually am into this spiritual stuff? So I kind of stumbled across her in the midst of the collapse, and I was basically like, something spoke to me, and I was just messaged her one day out of the blue. We hadn't really had direct communication. I said, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm supposed to message you, and I'm supposed to get something out of this. Like you're supposed to help me in some way to get through what's going on. We hopped on the Zoom later that day, and that year of working with her was like a pivotal change for me, where it was like my spirituality cracked wide open. For the first time in my life, I felt like I actually was understanding who I am and how to connect with myself, not just in terms of like the physical side, but like the emotional, mental, spiritual sides too. And that really was a huge shift for me in that regards. But I will also say that some really hard decisions had to be made. And I say hard decisions because I held on to a lot of things, like white knuckling them, like, this is my identity. This is all I've known. This is like who I'm meant to be and what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life because there was nothing behind the because. It was just because. And things like my
Because
nursing
I'm attached to that
license.
idea.
Exactly. That's the identity that I've worn my whole life. What do you mean there could be something else available to me? And so things like nursing and coaching were stuff that I drug out over the last like 3 years. From the point of the collapse of the company, it should have been something that I hung up and walked away from right away, but I thought for sure that was what I was supposed to do. So I didn't hang up my coaching license until the fall of 2024. And then I didn't actually hang up my so yeah, my nursing license was fall of 2024. My coaching license didn't get hung up until the summer of last year. So
Hmm.
it's only recently that I fully decided to walk away and hang up the titles of these things and actually move into the space that I'm supposed to be in. So I think that's a testament towards, we always think that we're going to get these massive lessons and that it should be so easy to instill these habits and then make these choices and then just suddenly our life shifts. This is 3 years of hard ass work that I have been
Hmm.
doing day in and day out to actually finally now get to the place in my life that I have always felt like I wanted to be at. So it
Yeah.
doesn't happen overnight, right? There's a lot
No.
of work that goes into it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I resonate with that so much. I was a plumber for 12 years before I shifted into this. And even though the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I was miserable and I wanted out of it so bad, when I finally decided to walk away, it was so hard for me to release that identity because I had put so much work into becoming successful in that.
Mm,
And I think that that's such a common thing for people, like regardless of whether they love what they do or they love what they, call themselves or label themselves, we become so attached to it and then it's like a death to release
mm,
that. And the other thing I wanted to say too before I forgot was something that I think is so important to highlight. And as a somatic facilitator, I want to completely and 100% agree with you when you were talking about having the tools and feeling
mm,
like you forgot them. And it's not that we forget the tools because the same thing happens to me. I have experienced a lot of freeze in my life. Like that's my most fight and freeze are my go-tos. And when I'm in a freeze mode, I ain't doing shit. I am
mm-hmm.
binging a show, something hopefully with like 15 seasons, because I'm going through
Feel
a
that.
time. And I think that we give ourselves a hard time, like, oh, I know the tools I should be doing better. But when you are in a freeze state, it is so hard. When you're in any sort of state of survival, it takes an incredible amount of consciousness to be able to shift that, but it also takes time. Sometimes the only thing that we can do is give ourselves space to thaw. Like it's like
Mm.
literally like the term thawing. Like you can't rush it. You have to just allow yourself to melt. So I just really wanted to bring that forward because I think it's really important that, people know that that's a normal thing.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you for that. I feel like so many times we have this like energy within us that feels like it needs to rush things, like we need to move
Hmm.
through this so fast. And quite honestly, I think that's the toxic positivity bullshit that a lot of we're seeing online in regards to people being like, just always be happy all the time and have gratitude and like never feel a bad feeling. And it's like, okay, yes, we want to, if you're familiar with like Abraham Hicks, we want to get into like the vortex. We want to be in a good place where we are
Hmm.
feeling good and optimal most of the time. But that's not happening while ignoring our emotions. We need to be able to allow ourselves to move through what is coming up and feel the damn feelings. And that's where toxic positivity really gets fucked up. It always wants to shame us like we're not doing enough, we're not moving fast
Yeah.
enough. And It's just like grief. Everybody grieves in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody experiences their emotions in their own way. And we're all recovering from shit in our life. You can't look at anybody's life and say they haven't had trauma. Everybody has in
Yeah,
different capacities. And we have to be able to create space to move through those at a timeline that is appropriate to ourselves, not to somebody else. And so something that took me 3 years to overcome, maybe it only takes somebody else a year, or maybe it takes somebody else 10 years. There's no right or wrong for those timelines, but they're based on our own unique circumstances. And we have to allow ourselves that space to move into whatever that might be.
I agree. I think that our culture in general is like we have no patience. And like that's
Mm,
something I've been really focusing on a lot in my life, or I should say like noticing is how I rush myself in all these different aspects of my life. And I like resonate with the whole business thing. Like it's probably only honestly been like the last couple of months in my business where I'm like, no, like we're perfectly on time. We're good. Like there's no rush. Up until then, like the last 2 years of my business have been, let's go, let's go. We gotta 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 get this
mhm.
shit rolling. And you see so many people like online talking about how successful they are and how quickly they became successful. And it's such a sham, I feel like, because the people who do become successful quickly either are burning the fuck out and crashing, or they have put in years of work in the background to build the foundation to get to where they are. And people don't see that, you know? You can't, like, it doesn't feel good. And I'm sure you can relate to this so much. If you have like a massive influx of business, even good things. Like I heard this analogy. It was like, of course we love to like be in the sun and enjoy the sun, and it's a great, amazing thing. But if you come out of a dark cave, you can't handle all of the sun. You have to adjust to it.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would even say too, like if all you have is sun 24/7 and
yeah,
never have a reprieve, never have shade, never have a break from it, well, that's
yeah,
going to be too much
exactly.
too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's finding those balances for ourselves. And I couldn't like agree more with what you just said because I spoke to the hustle mentality that I was very much in. I had to learn how to build in 1 minute lunch breaks when I first started after the collapse of this business. Sounds fucking retarded. And it is in a large sense because I was not taking care of myself in any way. I literally would go an entire 16-hour day of working, barely getting up to go pee or have a drink of water and not eat. I was not taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had the business collapse, that's the first thing my coach said, build in lunch breaks. Start with 1 minute. Put a timer for 1 minute and start with that. So I did. I would step out on my patio. At the time, we were living just off White Ave. This is the summer following. And I would step out onto the patio and I would stand there for a minute and just breathe. Go back in, continue with work. And eventually, those 1 minutes turned into 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 30 minutes. And I was actually able to have lunch and read a chapter of my book and do the
Yeah.
things that, I wanted to do. And now, like compared to where I was when I first started, the predominant amount of my day is slow, intentional, purposeful, and built around the rest. I start my day with like 2 hours of meditation and drinking my cup in like the darkness and silence. I look out onto like the street in front of our house, in my little like she den that I created here. And I have these very slow, intentional days. I follow what's lighting me up. I look at, all the things that I want to do for that week or this month, and I listen to my gut. What do I want to work on today? What's lighting me up? What's calling me forward? And
Mm-hmm.
I pick those things out and I do them. So as I lean into this every single day, kind of like romanticizing my schedule almost in a way, I am getting so much more done than I ever did before when I was hustling and grinding and forcing myself. And that is crazy to think about, that slowing down actually has led me to speeding up. And not just that I'm getting more done, but the intention of my work is better, the quality of my work is better. And it is ultimately leading to more opportunities, more blessings, more good things coming through. because of the energy space that I'm in while I do it. It's not just what you're doing, it's how you are doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I talk about this a lot in my work. It's like expanding your capacity for ease. And you
Mm.
just explained such a perfect analogy of that because when your system is just used to that hustle and that grind, it's so uncomfortable to um, to give yourself that much space. Even I've been noticing in my life, giving myself too much spaciousness in the mornings is actually uncomfortable for me at this point in my nervous system. So I have to find the balance between, where I'm coming from and where I want to go. So I love that you spoke about that, and I love to highlight those little things. I'm like, yes, I love what you're talking about. It's so important. So important.
Yeah, it is though. And I feel that a lot of us as women, again, these are the things that maybe we're not readily admitting out loud into the world. Like, not even to our closest friends, but especially not to the public, right? Strangers on the internet. We're not admitting usually the very raw things that are going on with us or how we're struggling or how we are living our day to day. But when I talk to 99.9% of women, I'm finding that they are operating, functioning, and or have been going through very similar things to me. Even if the circumstances look completely different, the energy or the intention or the overall messaging of what that circumstance is delivering is very similar to my own journey. And I think it is such a beautiful thing when we actually do have these conversations because it helps to alleviate that shame and also to help us know that we're not alone as we're going through this. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but it makes a huge difference for me.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. It makes a huge difference. And I think it's, like I was saying earlier, so important to find the courage to share all of this. And I also don't think that, when you're in the wound, like I've heard someone say, like, share the scars, not the wounds necessarily. Like it can be very dysregulating to share when you're not at least like have a good portion of your experience integrated.
Mm,
Because I can imagine
yes.
that a couple of years ago, for you to talk about this would probably just like, you'd be like, okay, I'm done spinning now.
Yeah, if I tried to share in the middle of that dissociative experience, I don't know what would have happened, but it probably wouldn't have been a good thing. I'm just gonna guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love what you brought up too about allowing yourself the opportunity to use your intuition to choose what you wanted to do. Because I like to do that with my morning routine as well. I found that I think that when you find all these things that make you feel good, you want to do all of them. And then it
Hmm.
starts to turn into it's just not fun anymore. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
feel good anymore. It feels like a job. And so I like to change kind of what's in my routine, but I think it's so important in our work as well, especially when you lead a soul-led business, you you really can't be like you have to create that spaciousness for yourself and allow yourself to flow for it to really I don't know, like just feel good and that, like that's the point when we start a business, right? Is to create that freedom for ourselves and like give ourselves the opportunity to create what it is that we want to create.
And I think too, as we go along, providing ourselves like the space to redefine what words like freedom mean is also equally important because
Yes.
again, when I was in the midst of building this crazy business, somehow I thought managing a team of over 20 and 4 clinic locations and a whole pile of clients was somehow going to give me freedom. And, the best part about this is that I'm leaving on Tuesday at the time of this recording, it's a few days away. I'm leaving on this date to go travel and we're going back to Asia. And this is almost like a rewrite for me because when we traveled back in the winter of 2022 into, or sorry, it was 2021 to 2020, no, 2022 to 2023. When we traveled throughout that winter, that was the period where we went to Asia and I was in the midst of hiring all of our team. And we did like 75 interviews and all of the things. So I was continually on calls. I remember getting up at like 3 a.m. to do calls in the morning, and then other nights I would stay up until like midnight, 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., sorry, doing calls into the evening and night because the time change was so different. And so I was working crazy hours. I wasn't enjoying a single moment of our trip to Asia, always being stressed about like the business and who to pick and all of these things. It wasn't really an enjoyable trip for me that many years ago. And so
Hmm.
now having the opportunity to go back, being in a completely different space where I have no calls, unless it happens to be like I'm interviewing a guest for my podcast or similar to this, I'm hopping on somebody else's. And that is very intentionally chosen within hours that will work with my schedule. Unless it is one of those things, all I am doing while I'm away is writing and getting to enjoy our vacation, which seems crazy and wild and so beautiful. This is the definition of success that I actually want. This is the one that actually feels good to me. Not working 24/7 and being stressed and glued to my phone and not present. I want to create a life that is built around this sensation of freedom. And that
Yeah.
is what I'm finally on the path of, but it's not what I originally defined freedom as.
Yeah. I love that. And I totally agree with you because I think even for myself, the idea of freedom changes. And I think it does for everybody because, like we were talking about earlier, I think we have these ideas of what we want, and it takes us going and, stepping into those roles to say, oh, actually, this doesn't feel like freedom to me. This is like what somebody else told me that freedom would be or whatever. And it's like this unraveling that starts to happen as you experience life more and more, and as you put yourself out there and allow yourself to have the experiences that you feel led to have. You start to realize more and more. It's like just, yeah, like this beautiful unraveling of what everybody else's ideas are and coming back into that wholeness with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to an hour here. I really wanted to talk about your explant journey, but I feel like I'm gonna have to have you back on another time to talk about that because, yeah, I would just love to dive into like chronic illness and stuff like that to you. And so here's our little teaser for our next episode together. Yeah, I guess we could just talk about like what do you have, what are you offering right now? Is it just your podcast? Or like what does your business look like these days in terms of like what you're offering?
Oh, for sure. So my podcast is called Go Regulate Yourself. So it's kind of a spin-off of like Go Fuck Yourself in the most loving way possible, both for ourselves and for other people, where it's like take responsibility for your shit, but also you are not responsible for anybody else's. So I would love to invite your community pop over and browse my podcast and see if they like it. Very similar jam to what you got going on here. So I'm sure it will resonate.
Yeah.
And then mainly, my world just kind of consists of my Substacks that I've launched. So, as I mentioned, I have one, it's called the 30 something Bible. So, it's about surviving your 30s when it gets to this point and it feels like chaos has ensued and everything is going wrong and you have to rewrite your identity. It's going to be some real raw shares through there. There's a few posts up already that are in that realm of things. And then I also am this month starting the Untethered Boots, which is all about traveling, living a minimalist life, because I didn't mention that, but my husband and I sold everything that we owned back in 2021. So we have only a suitcase of belongings each, and we usually travel 6 months of the year. So I'm going to start this travel publication sharing about our expat travel oriented, minimalism oriented type of blog. And I'm excited to share a lot of that because we have found a lot of hidden gems of traveling since 2021. We've
Yeah.
traveled before that, but not like this. So that is also one of my Substack publications available. And then I also do have one that's called Reg Babes After Dark, which is basically like Regulation Babes. And it's a deep dive into some of the podcast stuff. So we go into our guests that we feature a little bit more deeply and personally within that Substack publication, and then also have some secret like live streams. We just did one today actually before we recorded this, and things like that. So if you pop over to my website, which is just brianneroberge.com, BrianneRoberge.com. On there, you'll be able to find links to everything, the podcast, my Substack publications, all of the things. So if you're interested, come tag along, find me on social media, and yeah, let me know how you're doing.
That's awesome. Are you renting out, like, do you rent your house for like 6 months at a time, or like, how does that work with the traveling?
So we actually just rent fully furnished places when we're here.
Okay,
So we
that's
don't
what I
actually
figured.
own furniture, yeah, house, anything like that. We technically still own our house that we have in Stony, but we sold it on like a rent to own
Oh,
contract. So
cool.
the people that are in it, they have another almost 2 years until it's bought outright. So I mean, technically it's not really ours, but it's still ours if you know what I mean. But
Hmm.
yeah, when we're here, we just rent.
Yeah, that's cool. That must feel absolutely liberating.
Freeing.
Yeah. So freeing. I love that. I'm excited to check out your Substack. I also just started a Substack too. I feel like as a
Follow each other.
collective, what's that?
I said we'll have to follow each other.
Yeah. I feel like as a collective, we're really starting to shift. Like I know for myself, like even over the last couple of months, I'm like I don't know, I'm feeling some type of way about social media and I'm just feeling the call to move off of it and to be in spaces that
Mhm.
are just feeling more aligned, I guess. And Substack is, yeah, Substack is that and writing is such a when you love writing, which I'm sure you understand, it just it's like a flow from your soul and it just feels poetic, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's natural, it's therapeutic, it's so many things. And I agree, the Substack community there within like the chat spaces and the posts that everybody does, it's so supportive and uplifting and everybody's there just to live a slow, intentional life. And I'm seeing that common thread too, as you mentioned, where people are moving away from social media. Like even myself, I'm only on there to post things for the podcast or whatever else. I really try not to be on there to browse anymore. And so all the time people ask me, they're like, "Oh, did you see this? Or did you see this? Or so and so's doing this?" I'm like, "Nope, no idea." Like, I'm not on
Yeah.
social media really. So even though you see my stuff, I'm not actually there, if you know what I
Yeah, totally. You're like, no, I'm too good for that. I'm too good for that shit. Okay. We are the elite. We do not scroll on social. No, I'm just kidding. I definitely have times where I'm like just getting lost in the doom scroll for sure. But
mean.
as time goes on, just trying to be so much more separated from my phone and disconnected from my phone and
It's
allowing
hard.
myself, it is really hard. And just recently, I was really recognizing that a big part of it is this feeling of pressure that we have to be available to everybody all the time, which is like
Hmm.
so exhausting.
It's
So
gross.
exhausting.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like my me time, so yeah. That's yeah, I think that's where a lot of people are moving. And I don't know if you've been on Threads at all, but I have been moving a little bit more into Threads and just from what I looked at in Substack the other day, it kind of seems like a little bit of a similar vibe.
Good to know. I haven't ventured too much into that area, so maybe I should check it out.
Yeah. It feels a lot less like obtrusive to your, I don't even know if that's a word, but like when you're scrolling on Facebook or Instagram, it's like video after video. It's so stimulating.
Mm.
Whereas at least on Threads, it's all just words and it's so much more community based. Like it's so everyone's engaging with everyone all the time and it just feels different. Feels very different from Instagram. So, yeah.
I like that. Okay, I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, definitely worth it to check it out. Yeah. Okay. Is there anything that you feel like you would like to share, any words of wisdom from something that maybe you've been going through lately that you just feel like your heart wants to share?
I'm like, there's so many things that I will pick one. First of all, I appreciate you having me on because this has been so fun and it's beautiful to share in a different way and obviously with a different audience. So I appreciate the platform and the space. But to leave your audience with some words of wisdom, I guess what I would say is a big thing that's been coming up for me lately is not having to over explain or have people understand where I'm coming at in regards to boundaries that I'm putting in or where I am putting my energy now moving forward because my priorities have changed in my life and I'm no longer willing to pour into buckets that have holes in them where my energy is not being utilized and is just kind of running out. And I really want to preserve my energy for me in 2026. This is my I'm gonna say this and hopefully it's okay on your podcast.
Oh
This is
yeah.
my cunty era where I'm
Yeah.
like, this is for me. This year is about me stepping into my power, my voice, being unapologetic, and really being selfish in a way of how I use the energy that I have. So my priorities have changed, and not everybody's okay with that. And I think a really important thing for us to understand is when we start to speak our truth, we start to unleash our voice, we start to say no, we start to have boundaries, we start to change the actions that we're taking and the things that we do, we're going to trigger a lot of people. And not everybody is going to adjust comfortably to those changes that we're making. And so there will be people that tell you that you're doing things wrong. Oh, you've changed or you're not the same or go back to the way things were and you're going to be told 10 ways to Sunday how you're doing things wrong. But you always have to trust that inner voice that is coming up for you and believe in your ability to change, believe in yourself. Because if you're not in your corner, who the hell is going to be? There is not a lot of people that are going to be the first in line to defend you. You have to be your first person in line to defend yourself. And so I guess to kind of round this all out and just say the one thing to do moving forward is to trust yourself, to choose yourself, and to make decisions that are actually in alignment with who you want to be and where you want to go, and to block out the noise that tells you otherwise.
Yeah. I love that so much. Love, 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 love. Yes, coming back to self-trust. And I think it's so important. Like, I know for me, the biggest thing that's helped me come back to that self-trust is literally creating space to anchor into it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
slow the fuck down and connect with yourself. Like, root into, you and your
Mm-hmm.
truth. And I think that when those moments of doubt come up, just keep continuing to come back to the truth. And eventually that will shine through as, the dominant.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I loved our conversation today. It was so much fun and it was such a good flow. And I'm excited to have you come back. Um, yeah. So thank you everybody for listening. Stay tuned for the next time I have Brianne come on to the podcast. And I hope everybody has an amazing day.